Welcome to lesson number 5, Daniel chapter 7. But it's way more than Daniel chapter 7 because hopefully you've already seen the first 4 lessons. Because when we get to this lesson here, we are connecting dots from the first lesson, the second lesson, the third lesson, the fourth lesson, and it's just coming together, and it's a wow factor when you look at all the things that we've been able to have it come together. Enjoy this clip. Be sure to leave a comment and also to like it so we get more exposure. We want everyone to be watching these lessons here. The first 6 are foundational. So enjoy this. God bless. Have a great day. Hello everyone. It is great to have you here as we are going to be covering Daniel chapter 7, the third greatest foundational chapter out of all the Bible. It is a fantastic chapter to look at now that you have looked at the clips regarding Revelation chapters 17 and 18 and 13, and also Daniel chapter 11 and 8. Those are the 2 foundational chapters, Daniel chapter 11 and 8 in that order. Now that you've gone over those chapters, now we're going to have a ton of fun with Daniel chapter 7. And as you've seen with those other clips, we have made some fantastic discoveries and connections and correlations. And you know what? That's the same thing as we look at Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7 is diagrammed out here on the chart. So we're going to be talking about it, but we're going to see how it ties in with the other chapters, Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 11, Revelation chapter 17. And, you know, I love mysteries. I love it when you're watching the movie and you're getting all the clues, and then at the end, they make all the connections, and you go, oh, aha. And that is what we're going to be seeing here today. When we bring together all these puzzle pieces that we've put together through these other chapters, now we bring it in with Daniel chapter 7, and it is fantastic. So rather than just telling you how fantastic it is, we're just going to get started on it, and we're going to start with Daniel chapter 7. So over in Daniel chapter 7, let me get this arrow out of our way right here for now. Over in Daniel chapter 7, it begins with, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and the visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea, and 4 beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another, from another. Okay, now, what is that talking about here? Thankfully, we get the answer in Daniel chapter 7. The angel tells Daniel what the meaning is. We're going to start with verse 15 over here. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit and in the midst of my body, and the vision of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are 4 kings, which shall arise out of the earth. There we have it. We don't have to guess. We know that they're 4 kings. All right. So now let's go learn about these 4 kings. Go back over here to verse 4, and it says, And the first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Now, to me, this is an interesting verse. I'm not seeing that this king is very threatening. In fact, he had his wings plucked from him. So, okay, let's see what else we can learn about the second king. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it, and they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. All right, the second king. He has my attention. It looks like he's going to kill a lot of people. So I want to know more about that king. And are you noticing that we're not being told what country they're from? All right, let's go to the third king, see what we can find out about the third king. And after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. All right, interesting description of the leopard king here. I don't know if I should be scared of this king or not at this point. Dominion was given to it, so what does that mean? Is he going to expand his area? I don't know. But, however, look at this 4th king here. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth, and it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. All right, the 4th king, he has my attention. I want to know about this 4th king. Dreadful, terrible. He is diverse from all the others. There's a big focus on this 4th king. Well, let's go ahead and continue on and just get a little bit better feel for the chapter here. In verse 8 we read, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first 3 horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. All right, so let's get a visual of this here. Over on the chart, as I diagrammed out Daniel chapter 7, okay, I put in here the 3 kings, and then the 4th king, dreadful and terrible. And then there's 10 horns. So after he's gone, there's going to be 10 horns, and 10 horns represent kings or presidents or leaders. And then 3 of these kings or leaders or presidents are going to be plucked up by a little horn. And this little horn has eyes like eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Okay, so that's what we've learned so far from Daniel chapter 7. Let's go ahead and continue on with Daniel chapter 7 and see what we can learn. In verse 9, I beheld till the thrones thereof were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garments were white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool, and his throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning. Here we go. Burning fire. Now let's go over here to verse 10. And a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. Oh, this is good. This is good here. Now, but look at verse 11 here. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to a burning flame. Wow. Okay, so this little horn king, he gets destroyed, and he's given to the burning flame. That ties in with what we've read before in Revelation chapter 19, it looks like, when we were talking about the 8th king from the book of Revelation that we tied in as representing the whole image of the beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns from Revelation chapter 17. So let's look at what happens to that beast that is referred to in the book of Revelation. When Christ returns in power and glory, he defeats the beast. We read in verse 20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped him in his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. And so then we see that this little horn king is given to the burning flame. All right, so now we're talking about the same person. We're talking about the eighth king, as we referenced in Revelation chapter 17. Nice connection. And with that connection, well, what it means is that we have, okay, so now we know that this king is the same as this king over here, the eighth king from the book of Revelation. And we had also discovered that this person is the same person as the vile person from Daniel chapter 11. And then we also had made the connection that this person here, the little horn king, in Daniel chapter 8, is the same person down here. In fact, somehow he's the king over here, but then he becomes the king over here. How is that? We are going to get the answer to that. We're going to connect the dots here in Daniel chapter 7. Let's get back over to Daniel chapter 7 and learn a little bit more here. In verse 12, it says, "As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time." I want you to think about that. So what are the concerning the rest of the beasts? We're talking about this right over here. We're talking about the lion king, the bear king, and the leopard king. Those three kings are going to, got them right over here on this chart. These three kings live to see the return of Christ in power and glory. And when Christ comes back in power and glory, Christ removes these three kings from being kings, but he prolongs their lives. Fascinating. This is so fascinating here. So, the bear. What could the bear represent? Well, I've said, okay, the bear probably represents Russia, is my guess on it. And years ago, I was looking at Putin and saying, the Putin looks like he's the type of guy that he could go and devour much flesh. He could kill many people, it looks like. He's that type of person, I think. And but I said, you know what? But their laws is that he can only be president for 2 terms. And the second term would expire in 2024. So I said, so unless the laws change, it's not going to be him. Well, back in July of 2020, it was voted that he can continue to run until 2036. He can be president until 2036 at this point here. So it sure does look like he is in the position to fulfill the prophecy of the bear king. The leopard king, I have wondered about this for many years, and I keep on thinking of China, how powerful China is, and I'm leaning towards that President Xi could be that person. The interesting thing is that they had laws too about how long a person could be president. Yet in 2018, they passed a law that makes it that they lifted the term limits, and he could be president for life. So again, he's in the position where he could fulfill that prophecy. And they got to fulfill the prophecy to have that confirmed. But it sure looks like these two are lining up. And Putin is 68 in 2020, and Xi is 67 in 2020. So this is interesting. We're looking at 2 people that are in their late 60s that are going to be around to see the return of Christ in power and glory. Fascinating. We've been able to, looks like we've been able to identify 2 people referenced in the Bible regarding our time that are going to be living to see the return of Christ. That is monumental. We haven't been able to do that. Now we have. So this is cool. All right. Let's learn more from Daniel chapter 7. Okay, so now Okay, and then we read verse 12, and now let's go to verse 13. And I saw in the night vision, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and kingdom, and all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. Of course, this is talking about the return of Christ in power and glory. And I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. And I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are four kings, which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. So we're talking about the fourth king here. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes and a mouth that spake great things, whose stout was more stout than his fellows. And I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them. All right, so this is getting my attention here. It's that little horn king. It's the time when that little horn king is in power. During that time that the little horn king is in power is where we really need to be paying attention to him as far as for the safety of the saints. That it says that he's going to make war with the saints over here, and he's going to prevail against them. Now the question is that saints all around the world, or is it the saints more around the Middle East area? I'm tending to think that it's going to be more around the Middle East area. But let's go ahead and get more information from Daniel chapter 7 here. Until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. So this fourth beast is the fourth kingdom. So now a kingdom can have many kings, but a king only has his one life. And we got to make sure that we get that distinction and keep that distinction clear as we're reading about who does what. So now we're talking about the fourth beast is the fourth kingdom. But we did know that the fourth beast was a king. And so now let's see what happens. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. So now we got these other 10 kings which come out of this one kingdom. And out of the 10 kings that come out of that one kingdom, there's going to be 3 of the kings that are going to be subdued. And now let's look at verse 25. It's this other king that comes up. That what does he do? Verse 25. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, and the dividing of times. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom of under the whole earth shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitation much troubled me, and my countenance changed in me, but I kept the matter in my heart. All right, so we've read Daniel chapter 7. Let's go ahead and start making some connections here. So we know that this is leading up. Daniel chapter 7 starts off talking about these 4 kings, and we know that it ends with the return of Christ in power and glory. So this that helps us out here. So you got these 4 kings, and then these 3 kings are going to live to see the return of Christ in power and glory. This king, when something happens to him, then his kingdom gets splits up into 10 kingdoms, and then somehow 3 kings get killed by this little horn king. And this little horn king goes to fight against Christ when Christ comes back in power and glory. So does this king, so does this king over here. So we've made the connect, and so does this one over here. So we got these 4 chapters that all talk about this one king that goes to fight against Christ when Christ returns in power and glory. The interesting thing is that in Daniel chapter 11, it talks about this vile person being from the kingdom of the north. In Revelation chapter 17, it doesn't say what kingdom he's from. In Daniel chapter 8, it talks about him first being a king over in one of the 4 areas that was the former U.S. area. So we read in Daniel chapter 8 that the United States is going to split up into 4 areas, and he is a king from one of those 4 areas. Now, he's not one of the initial 4 kings. So coming up, the United States gets split up into 4, and there's going to be those 4 leaders, but he's not one of those 4 initial leaders. He becomes a leader afterwards, later on. And then over in Daniel chapter 7 doesn't tell us what kingdoms, what countries any of these people are. Now we're going to be able to start to make some connections, some big connections, because we now know that this little horn king, he is from the kingdom of the north. So now we know that he's from the kingdom of the north, but we also know that he is first a king over in one of the 4 Grecia areas. How does the king from one of the 4 Grecia, one of the 4 U.S. areas, when it gets split up, how does a person from one of the former U.S. areas end up being the king over in the kingdom of the north, over in the Middle East? We got to make that connection. And now we can. What we find out is that these 3 kings get killed. Well, we know that the 7th king gets killed also. So we now make a connection. Okay, this 7th king is one of the 3 kings that get killed over here. And now we know that it's by this little horn king that is a king in one of the 4 U.S. areas, former U.S. areas, that will go down and he'll kill 3 of these kings, one of them being this one here, and then he'll become the 4th king over here. Fantastic connection. How does that happen? Why does it happen? We got to connect the dots. We got to connect the dots. And to help us do that, let's go ahead and I want to take a look at Daniel chapter 11. It's talking about the 2nd king of the north over here in verse 19. So the 2nd king of the north is this king here. And now we're going to be reading that this king, something happens to him, and then you have this king the raiser of taxes person that steps in, and then after a few days he gets killed by this person here. So now let's go ahead and just read about that real quick. And we're going to make a fantastic connection with this and also with Revelation chapter 17. So take a look at this here. This is talking about the second king of the north. And he shall turn his face towards the ford of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and not be found. And so now we have the next king stepping up, which is the third king of the kingdom of the north, or the seventh king in the book of Revelation, that shall continue for a short space. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. So if he's not destroyed by anger or battle, how is he killed? Let's take a look over here. I like reading verse 22 first. With the arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. So it's just not the raiser of taxes person that gets killed, but it's also a prince of the covenant. Now, look at verse 21. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Boy, doesn't that sound like something that Satan would do? Someone that has that type of demeanor, like Satan. Okay, so let's make a connection over here. So now we know that that with an arms of a flood, they're going to come over and kill this king here, and the prince of the covenant also, and then he's going to come in peaceably and take over the kingdom, even though the people of the kingdom of the north don't give him the honor of being king. He is still going to be the king. So he was a king, and then he's not given the honor of being the king, and yet he is. All right, keep that in mind as we now go over to Revelation chapter 17. We had read that John had seen a beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. And we had also read about a woman that rides upon this beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns. And in verse 7, the angel says, well, I'm going to tell you what all this means. So let's pick it up on verse 7. And the angel said unto me, wherefore dost thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast which thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wander, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is. And we're going, wow, was and is not, and yet is. What does that mean? Well, let's keep on reading here. And here is a mind that hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. Well, let's look at verse 18. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So on the chart, we have this city over here. And the city sits on 7 mountains. So we have that there. Let's find out now more about the 7 heads as well. So the 7 heads represent 2 things. They represent 7 mountains, and they represent 7 kings. Let's read more about it over here in verse 10. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th. The 8th what? They were just talking about kings. We just made a huge connection. The 8th king that was and is not and yet is, it's the 8th king. And how is he a king that was and is not and yet is? Wow. Look at that. Go right back over to Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 11, and here we read about this this vile person that comes in with the arms of a flood. Where does he get his arms? Where does he get his people? He was a king over at another place. And he takes over, he kills, the razor attacks this person, and then he tells the people, hey, everything's okay here. Don't worry about it. There's nothing to see. I'm just going to take over. And he does it with flatteries and peaceably, and the people don't give him the honor of being the king, and yet he is their king. The king that was and is not and yet is. Mystery solved. This is fantastic. We used Revelation chapter 17 and Daniel chapter 11 and Daniel chapter 8 to make the connection with this, and also Daniel chapter 7. And we're bringing all this together and go, wow, that's what it all means. That's how it all connects. But there's more to the story behind this, guys, because what we're going to be looking at is that in Daniel chapter 7, it talks about this fourth king being dreadful and terrible. So who is this king? Where does he line up? Who does he match up with? Well, let's go ahead and go back over to Daniel chapter 11, and we're going to be reading more about this king right here and what he does, and see if it matches up with what we can read here on Daniel chapter 7 about this dreadful and terrible king. All right, so back over to Daniel chapter 11. So in Daniel chapter 11, that second king of the north, he takes over after his father dies. And it says in verse 10 now, relating to the sons of the first king of the north, it says, but his son shall be stirred up and shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and shall certainly come and overflow and pass through. Then shall he return and be stirred up even to his own fortress. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth and fight against him, even with the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude. This is the king of the north shall set forth a great multitude. But the multitude shall be given into the king of the south's hand. Let's get a little visual of this here, just so we can say who's who, what's going on here. All right. So in Daniel chapter 11, this king, he dies. He passes away. And then one of his sons takes over, and he goes over and attacks the king of the south area, and then he comes back, and then the king of the south says, okay, I'm going to come over and attack you. So the king of the north sets forth a great multitude, and the king of the south comes over, and let's see what happens. Let's get back over to Daniel chapter 11. In verse 12, we read, and when the king of the south hath taken away the multitude, the king of the south's heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s. But he, the king of the south, shall not be strengthened by it. How does the king of the south kill tens of thousands of people and not be strengthened by it? How can that be? We are going to connect the dots. Verse 13. Verse 13, what it says is, for the king of the north shall return, and shall set forth a multitude greater than the former, and shall certainly come after certain years, with a great army and with much riches. So for certain years, the king of the south king of the south had already killed a great tens of thousands, and his heart was lifted up by it. Yay, look what I done. And he's all excited about it and everything else like that. But it says that he shall not be strengthened by it. Well, why? Because years later, after certain years, somehow, some way, the king of the north is able to build up this massive army, even bigger than he had before, and he still has much riches left over. How? How in certain years does he get the money to build a massive army and still have much riches left over? We got to make that connection, and we're going to. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to see what this second king of the south, what does he do with that massive army and that great riches? Let's continue on now. In verse 14, and in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish the vision, but they shall fail. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and shall take the most fenced cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither shall his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he, this is the king of the north, but the king of the north that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand in the most glorious, he shall stand in the glorious land. That's Israel area, which by his hand shall be consumed. So what we're reading about is that this king of the north over here, with all his great army, with his big riches and everything else like that, after certain years, he is going to come over and he's going to attack the kingdom of the south over here, and he's going to have phenomenal success. Let's find out about what he does next now. Over here, verse 16. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand up in the glorious land, which by his hand shall be consumed, and he shall also set his face to enter in with the strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him. Thus shall he do, and he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand by on his side, neither be for him. After this shall he turn his face unto the isles, and shall take many. Look at that. Look at that. That king of the north, the second king of the north. The second king of the north is going to attack over here the kingdom of the south, and then he's going to move his kingdom over there, and then what is he going to do? He's going to take over isles, many isles. And how many isles? We don't know, but he's on a rampage, isn't he? He's on a rampage, and he conquers and conquers and conquers. Now again, let's just get a refresher of what happens to him. In verse 18 we read that after this he shall turn his face unto the isles, and he shall take many. But a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. Then he shall turn his face towards the ford of his own land. But he shall stumble and fall and not be found. Then shall stand up in his estate a riser of taxes in the glory of the kingdom, but within a few days he shall be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. And in his estate shall stand up a vile person, to whom they shall not give the honor of the kingdom, but he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. Well, how does he do that? With an arms of a flood. And they shall be overflown before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. So now we have that picture there of this king here, the second king of the north. He is dreadful and terrible. He goes out, he attacks the kingdom of the south, and then he's on a rampage, conquering one isle after another. And where was he going to stop? Was he just going to keep on conquering the whole world? You got to figure that the people at that time are just like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? But where did he get his massive army? Where did he get his massive wealth? Well, now we know that the second king of the south is the dreadful and terrible king? We got to find out, how does he get his power? Where does he get the money to be able to build this massive army and still have much riches left over? And why is he just so powerful that no one can stop him? Let's go over to Revelation chapter 13. And also I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. We read about a leopard in Daniel chapter 7. And his feet as the feet of a bear. We read about a bear in Daniel chapter 7. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion. We read about a lion over in Daniel chapter 7. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Well, isn't that interesting? And what we learn from Daniel chapter 7 is that the lion and bear and leopard, they're kings. They're individuals. There's people. And what do we learn here is that you have the lion, bear, and leopard. But we had also learned in Revelation chapter 17 that the beast that has 7 heads and 10 horns, that the 7 heads had 2 meanings. They represented the 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, and the woman is a city that reigns over the kings of the earth. And we also learned that the 7 heads also represent 7 kings. 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And we know that the 8th king is the image of the whole beast. And now we're going to be reading about one of the 7 heads. And the 7 heads is one of the 7 kings. Which king are we going to be talking about? Verse 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wandered after the beast. There's going to be one of the 7 heads that gets wounded to death. There's one of the 7 kings that gets wounded to death, and yet he lives, and all the world wanders after that king. That's the king that has the deadly wound and yet lives. Which king is it? Let's go backward to the chart. Okay, we got just to do a process of elimination. We know that there's 5 kings. 5 kings are fallen. 1 king is. Why in Revelation chapter 17 is the angel saying the 6th king is? And the 7th is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So it has to be one of these 7 kings here. It can't be any of the first 4 kings, because the first 4 kings, well, the 4th king is Ayatollah Khomeini over in Iran. He's in his 80s. The world isn't going to all worship and follow after him. And he hasn't gotten hurt, and he hasn't had a deadly wound and got healed. It's not him. It can't be this king over here either. It's not described that way in Daniel chapter 11. And okay, so let me go ahead and just show Daniel chapter 11. All right. So after the 4th king is gone, then his kingdom gets split up into a kingdom of the south and a kingdom of the north. Let's just read about it here for a second. And the kingdom of the south shall be strong, and one of his prince, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion, and his dominion shall be a great dominion. And in the end of years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand, nor his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her at these times. Well, let's get back over here to the chart. What we read is that when this king is gone, Ayatollah Khomeini, his kingdom is split up into a kingdom of the north and a kingdom of the south. And at the end of the years, the king of the south is going to send his daughter over to make an agreement with the king of the north. But the king of the north is going to kill the daughter and those that brought her, and those that begat, and he that begat her, which is the king of the south. And so that's what he does. He kills them. Okay, but let's see what happens after that. After that, what we're going to be reading is that there's going to be a new king of the south. And that king of the south is going to go over and attack this king here and take away vessels of silver and gold and their gods and their princes. So let's take a look at it. Daniel chapter 11 now. All right. But out of her roots shall one stand up in his estate, this in the kingdom of the south, which shall come with an army, and shall enter into the fortress of the king of the south, of the north, and shall deal against them and prevail. And also shall carry captive into Egypt their gods and their princes and their precious vessels of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. So now, going back over to the chart, what we read is that this king of the north, he has his vessels of silver and gold taken by the king of the south over here. So he is not dreadful and terrible. He is not. He did not get wounded and healed by any indication. All the world is not going to wander after this king here. And so it's interesting that the angel told Daniel that 5 kings are fallen, 5 are fallen. And then he says one is. Why did he say one is? Because as we're reading in Revelation chapter 13, that they're going to be focusing in on the king that had a deadly wound and yet lived. Is this king here? Is there any indication that this king could have been in a battle when he could have gotten hurt? Again, going back over to Daniel chapter 11. In Daniel chapter 11, we had read that this king of the south, in verse 11, and the king of the south shall be moved with choler, and shall come forth to fight with him, even the king of the north, the second king of the north, and he shall set forth, the king of the north shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into the king of the south's hand. And when the king of the south hath taken away the multitude, the king of the south's heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000s. But the king of the south shall not be strengthened by it. Yes, we have an indication of where that second king of the north could have been involved in a huge battle, and he could have gotten wounded with a deadly wound, and that deadly wound could have healed. This is the second king of the north over here. We're reading about this king in Revelation chapter 13 now. He's also described as the dreadful and terrible king in Daniel chapter 7. So we really want to pay attention to him. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to Revelation chapter 13, and now we're going to find out about how does he become so powerful. All right, over here. And now we're back over to Revelation chapter 13. In Revelation chapter 13, it talks about the head that is wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world shall wonder after the beast. And then in verse 4 it says, and they worshipped the dragon, which is Satan, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, who, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? And it shall be given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemy, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. 40 and 2 months. Now, so Revelation chapter 13 talked about this beast that has seven heads and 10 horns. They mention that there's also the feet that is described as the beast, which I saw was like unto a leopard, and feet as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. So we're getting this description of this beast over here. And we know that one of the heads gets wounded unto death. And then we know that all the world's going to wander after the beast. But now we're looking at a time in which this beast is going to speak great things, and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 40 and 2 months. What's that 40 and 2 months about? When we go over to Daniel chapter 11, or not, Revelation chapter 11. Let's take a look at this over here. In Revelation chapter 11, this is leading up to the return of Christ in power and glory. In fact, it's during the time starts off during the time of the events of the sixth trumpet angel. And we know that because over here in verse 15, it says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And the first woe is the fifth trumpet angel. The second woe is the sixth trumpet angel. And the third woe is the seventh trumpet angel. And in verse 15 it says, and the seventh trumpet angel sounded. So we know that verse 15 on is beginning to talk about the seventh sounding of the seventh trumpet angel time period. So verse 1 is talking about during the time of the sixth trumpet angel time, which is leading up to the return of Christ in power and glory. And what we read here is that then there was given me, this is John, a reed like unto a rod. And the angel stood, saying, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar, and them that worship therein. But the courts which is without the temple leave out, and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 40 and 2 months. So now we're seeing a connection between Daniel chapter 7 and Revelation chapter 11. Another nice connection here. And we know that the time that it's talking about is the last 42 months leading up to the return of Christ in power and glory. So Revelation chapter 13 talks about the image of the beast and is giving us different perspectives of it. You know, it's like a lion and bear, and it's like a leopard, and it has 7 heads and 10 horns. And Satan gives his power to the beast, and one of his head is wounded, and yet it lives, and all the world wanders after it, and then the beast it speaks blasphemy, and he has this great power for 42 months. So now let's go ahead and look at verse 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. So this beast, and now we understand from Revelation chapter 17 that the beast, that the whole image of the beast is represented by the 8th king. And we saw in Revelation chapter 11 that it's this 8th king that is going to have power for 42 months too, leading up to the return of Christ in power and glory. So now let's look at verse 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and people and nations. Well, we had read in Daniel chapter 7 that this little horn king is going to make war with the saints also. So now we got this other tie-in that it's during the time of the little horn king, which is the 8th king, leading up to the return of Christ in power and glory. This 8th king is going to make war with the saints at that time. So this last 42 months leading up to the return of Christ is going to be very, very dangerous for the saints. And but Let's look at verse 9 over here. If any man hath an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. What message is John trying to give us here in Revelation chapter 13? There's going to come a time where if you go out with the sword, you're going to be killed with the sword. There's going to come a time that you're going to have to just step aside, be patient, and let God fight the battle for you. That's what I'm getting out of that verse right there. Now, let's look at verse 11. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. So, what does... Okay, a lamb, that's not threatening. The 2 horns of the lamb, that's not threatening. But he speaks like the dragon, Satan. Yeah, okay, peaceably, flatteries. You know, he just coaches you along. Yes, everything's okay. And what are these in the 2 horns? What does horns represent? They represent kings or presidents or leaders. So let's see what these 2 kings do. The 2 kings exercise all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Let's take a look at the chart. Over here on the chart, I have these 2 kings right here. These 2 kings are going to be the ones that are going to cause the people around the earth that they should give worship this king over here, the 6th king over here, give him power. Why? How come? Why? This guy ends up going and attacking and conquering many isles. Why is this person, why are they saying trust this person? Let's get more insight. Get this right over here. Okay, let's read one more time and continue on. And the 2 kings exercise all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed, the 6th king. Why? He doeth the 2 kings do great wonders, so that the 2 kings make fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them which dwell on earth by the means of those miracles which the 2 kings had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on earth that they, us who dwell on earth, they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by the sword and did live. And the 2 kings had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause. So the image is going to speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And the 2 kings causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive the mark in their right hand or in their forehead, that no man might buy or sell, save he that hath the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. All right. So what we're learning is that this is the setup of the worldwide monetary system, the mark of the beast. And it is set up during the time of the 6th king, which is also the 2nd king of the north, and after he had received a deadly wound, and yet he lived. So why would people say, okay, we can trust him? Well, I'm thinking what's going on is that he was wounded to death, and yet he lived. And now he is personifying himself as, okay, guys, I blew it. I was out there, I was warring and everything else like that, but I can see that war is horrible. And I want there to be world peace. And so what I want to do is I want us to have this one monetary system, and I'll control it and I'll make it so that we can't have any more wars, because if anybody starts to attack another country, I can just press a button and we can shut that country down. I can shut down any individual. So I can prevent anyone from going out and attacking anybody else. Somehow, he has these two kings that go around the world and convincing the world that they, the people of the world, should make this worldwide monetary system, and that this king is going to control it. Fascinating. So, what event happens to where we need this worldwide monetary system? And the coming clip on Revelation chapter 6, it's going to be about the sixth seal event. The sixth seal event is the worst worldwide catastrophic event since the flood of Noah's time. It is asteroids or meteorites or something that by the hundreds are going to impact Earth so violently that John says that every mountain and island are going to be moved out of their place. You can imagine the tsunamis, the tidal waves that's going to cause. And that event is going to be coming up around 2029 to 2032 is my guess on that. And so it's after that event, after this huge destruction, that the world needs to pick itself up. And to do that, then what they're going to do is that these two kings, they're going to convince these three kings and other kings to be in leadership positions in the new monetary system. But this king is going to maintain the ultimate control of it at the beginning. And so with that, somehow they convince all the world to do it. And so you can see that if this is China, well, that's billions of people, and then these other countries, and there's more people there. And then this person is Muslim, and so you got a couple billion people there. So you can see how they can garner the support of various people around the world, saying, okay, let's go ahead and build this monetary system over here. So then, so now we can see how this king over here, in one of the 4 U.S. former areas, he is one of the 2 horns of the another beast that we read about in Revelation chapter 13. He and another king are the ones that go around convincing the world that they, the people around the world, should build this monetary system to where this king is going to have the vast control over it, but these other people are going to be in leadership positions as well. And so the other thing I want to bring up about this is that this monetary system, it's evil. We don't want to have any part of it. We got to take a look now and say, are we in an area that later on is going to be an area which is going to accept the evil monetary system? Because if we're in one of those areas, and that area has the law that if you aren't compliant with it, then what we read in Revelation chapter 13, verse 15, and the 2 kings had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So this worldwide monetary system, its capabilities is to be able to determine who's being compliant and who's not being compliant. And if you're not being compliant, it's able to say, okay, that person's not being compliant, and therefore they should be killed. Do you see how that's playing out now? Fascinating to see this connection here in Revelation chapter 13. And so I think we covered a lot of great area over here, but I want to bring in one more tie-in. Over here in Daniel chapter 8, it says in verse 8, "Therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven." And again, we have made the connection that here we have the he-goat over here with the notable horn, and that it represents the leader of the United States, which I'm saying Trump, and after he's gone, then the country gets splits up into four, and then out of one of the four comes a little horn. And let's just read a little bit more about that there. And the rough goat is the first king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. It's the first king of Grecia being referenced in this vision here. Now, with that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand up out of that nation, but not in his power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors are come to a full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and holy people. So here we have it, where this eighth king is going to be destroying the holy people, the saints. And through his policy also, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many, and he shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And it's talking about fighting against the prince of princes, which is Christ. And when Christ comes back in power and glory, we read how the eighth king, or in this case, the little horn king, is going to be destroyed, cast into a lake of fire or brimstone. All right, so wanted to bring in Daniel chapter 8 because what we're looking at over here on the chart is that in Daniel chapter 8, it does begin to be fulfilled around our time here. And it ends with a king that goes to fight against Christ when Christ returns in power and glory, and that king gets defeated. And so now we can just see that this king here in Daniel chapter 8 is absolutely the same king as referenced in Daniel chapter 7 as the little horn king, in Revelation chapter 8:17 as the eighth beast, the eighth king, and also the fourth king of the kingdom of the north, the vile person king over here. Fantastic connection that we've been able to make here, guys. This chapter 7, we just don't see how significant it is unless we bring in the connections and correlations from other chapters. We've tied in Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 11, Daniel chapter 12. We've also tied in Revelation chapters 11 and 13 and 17 and 19. And it is just fantastic to see how it all comes together. So now, what I really encourage you to do is go over to and watch that clip on Revelation chapter 6 and learn about that sixth seal event, the worst catastrophic event since the flood of Noah's time. And with that insight, then when you go and watch the shows, you'll have all the pieces to really be able to enjoy the conversation as we look to see what can we do to make that great, bright future leading up to the return of Christ. And what we learn is that the last few years leading up to the return of Christ is going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the saints. But I feel like that's going to be more over in the Middle East area. And we have a long time before now before we really find out. But I do know that God is on our side and God is going to be with us. So God bless you, and let God be with you today. You take care. Bye-bye now. Please like, comment, and share. Thank you.